Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started and what are they doing to stay there? And today I have another special guest as we are highlighting our HR Southwest Conference 2022 speakers. And this week we're talking to Victoria Person. Victoria is she's a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant for OutSolve. She's also a speaker for the 2022 HR Southwest Conference in October. She's certified with their SHRM-CP. And Victoria, I'm so glad to have you on the show. How you doing?
I am fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Okay, so for those who are listening right now, I'm looking behind Victoria, and she's got a Saints emblem on the back of her wall. I just got back from SHRM National Conference. That was absolutely fantastic. So you're a Saints fan, so you're from New Orleans. Let me ask you this. I was in New Orleans. Have you ever been to Fort Worth? As we're going to talk about the HR Southwest Conference.
Does the airport count?
Yes.
I did get stuck there overnight one night with some freeze situation. I did have to spend the night there, but not out and about.
That's funny. I'm making my, I have a bucket list to visit all 50 states. And I have a couple of states where I flew through and stopped at the airport. And I'm like, can I count those? That is so funny. Well, let me just say this before we get started. I visited New Orleans for SHRM 22. It was my first time in New Orleans. I went to so many different people and got so many wonderful recommendations. And it was absolutely one of my most amazing trips that I've had in a long time.
Oh yeah, people visit here and decide to move here. That's how half of our population happens, is they come to visit and decide to stay.
I did the food tour. I did in French Quarter. I did the Garden District. I mean, I did it all. Of course,
so you got off of Bourbon Street, it sounds like.
I did. Had so much fun. Oh my gosh. Well, we're going to talk about the HR Southwest Conference. We're going to talk about you're speaking. You're going to speak about LGBTQ. And I want to ask you, before we start talking about what you're going to be sharing at the conference, and I want to learn a little bit more about you. I would love to hear the Victoria Person story. Like, where did you grow up? I mean, did you grow up in New Orleans, and how in the world did you get into consulting and the work you're doing today?
Yeah, thanks. I did. I grew up here. My parents are not from here. My dad's from Mississippi. My mom's from Pennsylvania, but we moved here to New Orleans with my two older brothers when I was 2. So I definitely consider New Orleans my home. I think we're all born with that fleur-de-lis somewhere tattooed on us. It's just part of what happens when you live here for that long. But no, I did not start out in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I didn't even know it was a thing until like the mid to late 2000s. I studied broadcast journalism in school. I wanted to be the next Jane Pauley or Katie Couric, if you know those names, going back a little ways. But those were my idols. That was the vision I had for myself. But then I started actually working in local news, and it was depressing. It was just bad news story after bad news story, 20 seconds and then on to the next one. And my tender heart couldn't take all of that bad news. But at the same time in New Orleans, the film production business was picking up, and I fell into that. I did a couple of movies here. That led to me moving to Wilmington, North Carolina for about 4 years, where I did some freelance film and TV work. That led me to a full-time job in Los Angeles. So I moved across country to work in film and TV out there. Very quickly realized it was not a good role for me. The boss was not a good boss from my perspective. So I left the film industry altogether, moved to San Diego. And do you remember monster.com? Do you remember that site?
I absolutely do. Yes.
Yes. So I answered an ad on monster.com for an energy company out there in San Diego as a marketing assistant, which I thought it would be just a couple of years till I found something that I really wanted to do, because it was not energy. But I ended up being with that company for 19 years.
Mm.
And it was at that organization about midway through where they started a DE&I. At that time, it was just a diversity council.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asked to join the diversity council. And when we started having those meetings and I was learning about unconscious bias and privilege, like my mind was just being blown at every single meeting. And I couldn't believe all these perspectives that I had never considered before in my, I didn't think it was that sheltered, but it turns out to be, I did not have that vast of experience. And I loved it. So I volunteered for a couple of years on that council. That led to a full-time job in the diversity department. So I moved back to Los Angeles to work at that subsidiary there. Eventually became manager of the D&I department. Then it was COVID and we were all working from home. And I was in this downtown LA overpriced loft, feeling very separate from all the things that were important to me. And as so many of us did, started reconsidering my life. What am I doing here? Why am I in this position? And decided I wanted to be home, be in New Orleans, be close to my mom who just turned 80. I have a brother here and his family. So I put out that sort of message to the universe, and someone reached out to me over LinkedIn about this position I have now at OutSolve. And that is how I got to be a DE&I consultant.
And now here you are. It's amazing where we start and where we end up. Hey, let me ask you this. I see you won. And one of the things I really enjoy about like having guests on the show is I start looking at their profiles and doing some research. I noticed that you won the YWCA Phenomenal Woman Award in 2015. Tell me about that.
Oh, Bruce, this one I'm always a little embarrassed about having on my resume because I think it came too early in my career. I hope to be phenomenal at some point to make a real impact on people and companies and communities, but maybe in 2015 it was a little premature. I was at the time, I was on the board of directors at the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, and I had some exposure in the community through that, but phenomenal. It's something I still aspire to be.
Well, you sound phenomenal as we talk about your journey here. And by the way, movies, I mean, how fantastic. Like you're a movie star.
No, I was not on the, I mean, my name was on the screen and my parents did stand up in the theater as the credits rolled and
like
my
that.
name came on the screen.
There she is.
As it
I love
zoomed
that.
by.
I want to talk about this, the HR Southwest Conference. Of course, it's coming up. It's going to be in Fort Worth, Texas. It's going to be October the 16th through the 19th. I'm going to be putting the link in the show notes for anyone listening right now or watching that wants to get registered. And we're going to talk a little bit about the conference, Learn, Network, and Grow. That is the theme of the conference. I've been attending the conference for about, I think about 15 years. And I'm super excited about it. It's one of my favorite conferences of the year. And you're going to be speaking on LGBTQ, and your session is LGBTQ. Who are we and what do we want? And I would love for you to just share a little bit about that session. Like, how did you come up with the name and what's that going to be all about for the listeners?
Yeah, I'm excited about the conference too. So like I said, I've been in the DE&I space for about 13 years. I've been an out gay person about 25 years. And I realized how much is still not known about LGBTQ people. Now, understandably, I mean, we're only from about, depending on which research you read, somewhere between 4 and 7% of the US population identifying as LGBTQ. So it's not a giant group, but if you're not in large cities or have someone in your family who's LGBTQ, there's not that big of community where you are, whatever it is, you may just not know, may not have run into people. When I came out to my mother, she didn't think she knew any gay people but Ellen DeGeneres. And, at that time she was well past, her half century mark. So But we are here, we are out here living our lives, we are having families, we are going to work. And the non-LGBTQ people that we interact with, I think should know more about us, because there's still stereotypes based on years of not so flattering representation that has been in the media, in books, in movies, in TV, and laws are being passed around the country to this day that stigmatize us and dehumanize us. And LGBTQ people are significantly more likely to be bullied and harassed and even physically harmed or killed because of these misconceptions. So I just want to bring some awareness, shed some light, and, you know, kind of a little tongue in cheek, who are we and what do we want? You know, we're not so scary. We're just normal people trying to do average everyday things like go to work.
Listen, I appreciate you sharing this. I think this is an important topic, and I think it's one that the listeners right now want to hear more about. They want to learn more about, and how we could all add value to each other and continue to encourage each other through our journeys. I would love for you to just share, like, you know, for someone that is thinking about attending your session, and man, I got to tell you, these sessions are always so energizing to me, because, you know, you get in a room and you start networking and you talk to different people, you meet with different people, you learn. There's so much. What could you share? You know, you don't have to share your whole presentation, but would you share maybe a couple of tips or things? Let's just say a couple of ideas you might be sharing in your session that might give some people some insight on when they attend your session, what you're going to be sharing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I talked, you know, a little bit about all of the misconceptions and then some of the bad things that happen to LGBTQ people, but most of the people I've encountered doing this work are not wishing to do us harm, right? They just don't know what they don't know. So I like to see this session as kind of an LGBTQ 101 opportunity. What I've noticed hangs a lot of well-meaning people up is terminology. Things like, what's the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity, or gender identity and gender expression? What is cisgender? So, you know, why are people sharing their pronouns with me all of a sudden? It makes people nervous as things start to change and shift, and they hear new words or see new things happening and they don't know why it's happening and what does this mean for me. So I think when I can share that and people have a better understanding, they're not as overwhelmed or shy about interacting with LGBTQ people. So I'm just going to share some about that terminology, some best practices, some of the words not to say anymore, because there are certainly, as language has evolved, there's things we don't say anymore because it's insensitive or insulting or, you know, really inappropriate. Also, for practitioners who have the ability to go back to their workplaces and plan initiatives and institute, you know, some process changes, I'll have things, you know, more holistically for the organization, things to make it a welcoming place for LGBTQ employees. You know, I don't know if you've heard, there's a labor shortage going on. And if we want to be employers of choice, you know, we need to be attracting that wide range of talent. So that wide range includes LGBTQ people. So we want to make sure that our workplaces are places that are going to be inviting and, you know, places that everyone can come and do their best work and want to stay.
Hey, you brought up pronouns. I would like to touch on that. I mean, that's kind of a new thing that I see on LinkedIn. I see people starting to put pronouns on their page. Talk a little bit about the importance of pronouns and your thoughts around that.
When we talk about ourselves or other people, sometimes, Bruce, instead of saying your name, I would refer to you as he, right? You would refer to me as she, like she was on my podcast. So pronouns are important to people. They're a part of our identity. When someone is either transgender or non-binary, meaning they don't fit, feel they fit clearly into either the male or the female box, they don't want to check one of those two boxes, they feel something other than one of those two boxes, the pronouns become less clear. So the sharing of the pronouns, especially for that population, is for clarity to say, this is who I am. And if there's some confusion about my appearance or my name, you know, if the names a lot of times don't clearly indicate whether it's a male or female. I mean, Bruce is pretty obvious, Victoria is pretty obvious, but there could be a Chris or a Pat or, you know, and new names that people aren't sure what pronouns to use. So the pronouns for everybody can help clarify. I myself have been misgendered by people. You know, I have a shorter haircut. I wear a little bit more masculine clothes. If you could see my shoes, you would see that they come from the men's department. But I identify as a female. So when I introduce myself, sometimes I will use my pronouns to say I'm Victoria person. My pronouns are she and her. That's to help people, you know, be clear about who I am and to not go through that misgendering. When we have someone who's transgender or non-binary and it's less clear, this just helps clarify and keep them, help them be known a little better. And we really want to make that effort to use the right pronouns, because when we use the wrong ones, it's, like I said, it's insulting, it's inappropriate. Think now about what your pronouns are. You know, Bruce, I'm going to guess you didn't tell me, but I'm going to assume yours are he and him and his. If someone referred to you as she or her, it would be like, oh, that's not who I am. That's not how I identify. So that's why we want to make that effort when people share their pronouns, to use them. And when everyone starts to use them, not just transgender or non-binary people, it takes the onus and the pressure off of that group to, if they're the only ones using their pronouns, then it's kind of like, look, that's a transgender person. If we all start to do it, it just sort of, you know, normalizes it for everybody and makes it less of a stigma to say, that's our non-binary person over there. That's our transgender person over there. They're using their pronouns. If we all do it, then it's just more clear, I think, for people.
Yeah, this is very helpful. I know that the listeners and people watching are going to find this super helpful. I appreciate you sharing that. Hey, let me ask you this question. I mean, I know you spoke to several different groups. You've been, you know, speaking for a while. What are some of the, I don't know, maybe when you are speaking, I know that before we got on, you mentioned you've also spoken at Louisiana SHRM and some other chapters. What are some things that you hear from people that they come up and they say, hey, this was really helpful. This particular thing or this particular topic that you talked about was helpful. Anything come to mind? Any stories?
Well, the pronouns one, just to circle back to that, has been huge because, like you said, it's become very
it's new.
Much it's new. It's in the ether now, and people are seeing it and they're unsure about it. I had a session. And I was doing this in person, and I was taking people through the exercise of just turn to the person next to you and introduce yourself using your pronouns. So, you know, imagine it's a big conference room, everyone's at the big round tables, just turn to the person to your left, say, hey, I'm Victoria person, my pronouns are she and her. You know, you've been in those sessions, you see the room start to, you know, be energized and
get loud
and chit chat, and people are doing it, and then other conversations start. And so when I bring the room back together, you know, try to debrief. How was that for everybody? Oh, that was good. That was interesting. I'd never done that before. One guy raised his hand, and he said, I couldn't do it. And I was like, well, tell me more about that. He said, it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why I would share my pronouns with anybody. So I told him a lot about what I had just said to you earlier. And I tried it again. I said, okay, we're gonna practice again. And I went up to him and I said, hi, I'm Victoria person. My pronouns are she and her. And it took a couple of times, and like the words wouldn't come out of his mouth until finally, like the third time I did it, I don't know if it was, he finally got it or he just wanted me to take the spotlight off of him, but he finally was able to do it and to share his pronouns. And he came up to me afterwards, and I said, I hope that was okay, that it seemed like you were willing to interact. He said, yeah. And he said, what I understood from that finally, he said, because I'm an immigrant, I came from India, and I remember coming to America and so much being new and hard to understand, people Americans would slow down and either speak slower or take time to explain something to me. And I realized they weren't doing that for themselves. They were doing that for me. And he said, what you helped me to understand is the sharing of my pronouns is not for me. I'm doing it for other people. I'm doing it for the non-binary people around, or the trans people, or to just show that I'm an inclusive person. So he doesn't get any benefit out of sharing his pronouns, but as we are all humans and hopefully care about our effect on other people and want people around us to feel good and feel included and feel welcome, it's just a little thing that costs us nothing to share a pronoun. And so the fact that he was able to relate that to his own experience when he thought it was so different that he couldn't even say the words, I thought was a real, I mean, those sorts of things make me really appreciative that I had this opportunity.
I honestly, I have chills you sharing that story, because, you know, that's really what it's all about, especially when you're a speaker, right? And you're able to move people's hearts and inspire people and get people engaged like that. Hey, I would like to hear more about your story though, because you know, I mean, you talked about, you know, the different roles you took, you know, from the movies, North Carolina, LA, and then you become, you know, a leader of diversity. How about you? How hard was that for you? And what do you find, you sharing your story, how does that help others as well? Would you mind sharing that?
Oh yeah, sure. Thanks, Bruce. When I joined that company out in San Diego, that energy company, this was in the early 2000s, and I didn't come out right away. I wasn't sure how open the organization was. You know, San Diego can be a conservative town, and it was energy, so it's a very buttoned up organization. So I would refer to my quote unquote roommate. And when I joined in October, we had a Christmas party, and that's how long ago it was. We still called it a Christmas party, not a holiday party.
Okay.
But when we had our Christmas party, and we could bring our, you know, spouses, partners, what have you, I brought my quote unquote roommate, and I explained to her, like, here's the situation, we're going as roommates. Okay, fine. And as we walked up to the room of the party, the big room decked out with the giant tree and everything at the Hotel del Coronado, beautiful place. The leadership, there were a couple of leaders of the company standing at the doorway, and one of the VPs said to us, "What a lovely couple." And it was at that moment that, like, this sort of weight was lifted off me to realize, okay, I don't have to keep up a pretense. If one of the leaders of the company is going to acknowledge that, you know, I'm gay and it's okay, I went back to work just feeling so much better and such a relief. And what happens is I was better able to focus on my job. You know, I didn't have to worry about when people were telling stories about what they did over the weekend or on vacation. I didn't have to change the pronouns or, you know, not tell anything that would make it seem too weird that I was doing with a roommate, you know, like, oh, why'd you meet your roommate's family? That's weird. It just allowed me to take all of that energy wasted over there to put it towards work, to put it towards being a better employee, to put it towards being my better self. And that's why I think when people say, why you bring this up at work? It doesn't have anything to do with work. That's not the point. It's the covering of it. It's the being afraid of somebody finding out about it that detracts from me being able to do my best and be my best person. So if you've got a percentage of your workforce, and it's not just LGBTQ that people cover, it could be things around their gender. If a woman doesn't want to be seen as known as a mother because, oh, that means she's not committed to her job, or, you know, a father, a man has concerns about his age and he doesn't want people to know, you know, how old he really is. And so he obfuscates a little bit on that. When you put all that energy towards covering stuff, you're not getting the best self. You're not being your best self. And so that's why I work so hard to have inclusive workplaces, just because it helps everybody do their best.
That's incredible. I appreciate you sharing that story. I was thinking about, as you were sharing that, how that leadership, the person in leadership, how he was able to, just by that one generous comment, that one incredibly kind comment, just lifted you up and encouraged you in a way that nobody can even probably even understand,
Mhm.
and how we all as leaders can do that.
Yeah, someone said to me, you're known by the tracks that you leave. I think sometimes we go through just sort of blustering through our day, checking things off our list,
Mm,
feeling like we're achieving things. But I like the idea of thinking, what am I leaving behind me? Who have I touched, hopefully inspired in some way? And so whenever I get to lead an educational session or a training or speak at some event like the conference coming up in Fort Worth, I see it as really throwing a little pebble into a pond, right?
mm.
And hopefully that's having little ripple effects, and somebody listening or sitting in that audience takes something that I've said and takes it back to their workplace or their family or their community and throws another pebble. And all these ripples hopefully is creating more inclusion and more equity, and workplaces and communities and homes where everyone feels like they belong.
That's fantastic. LGBTQ, we're going to hear from Victoria Person in Fort Worth, October the 16th to the 19th. Be sure and register for the HR Southwest Conference. And when you do, definitely attend her session. I'm going to be putting all the links in the show notes. Hey, Victoria, I want to ask you one question before we shift over to kind of the last segment of the show. And that is, I always like to ask for my guests who are in these, leadership roles. You're a leader, you're leading a movement is what you're doing. Have you ever been given any advice that, yeah, it could be early in your career, mid-career, late career, it was just so good that you just often find yourself sharing that with others?
I don't know who shared it with me. I don't know where this seed was planted or this pebble was thrown, but I do this all the time and I share it with others, is to set an intention before, whether it's before a conversation like we're having. I did it before we started talking, whether it's, before I speak at a conference or even just lead a training that I do dozens of times, a month. If I take a few seconds in my head just to be clear about what I want the outcome to be, what I want the listeners to experience, to take away, I feel that it calms me, that I get better outcomes, because it really focuses me and just helps me know why I'm there, know my why. I think whatever significant thing that we're embarking on, we've got to know our why. Otherwise, we can get pulled off in so many directions. But I think for me, it's setting that intention has really served me well. Exactly.
Love that. Love that. Hey, I want to shift over to the final part of the show. I call it, it's time to accelerate. Just have some fun questions as we kind of wrap up here. And the first question I always like to ask is, what's your favorite city? I mean, you talked a little bit about California. You've talked about New Orleans. We're going to be in Fort Worth. Around, what's your favorite city to visit?
Do you want me to say it's Fort Worth? You want me
I want you to say your favorite city, but yes, if you want to say Fort Worth, that's going to add.
That's the clip that you're gonna save and
No,
use
it's
promo.
no, absolutely. Which Fort Worth is great. I love Fort Worth as well.
Well, similarly, when I was away from New Orleans for 24 years, New Orleans was my favorite city to come visit. But now that I'm back, it's just wherever I have friends to visit or theater to go see. I love live theater. So New York, Chicago, San Diego, where I still got a bunch of great friends, Palm Springs. Those are some of my highlights.
You're naming all my favorites too. I love all those. My brother lives in San Diego, California. And so is it Del Coronado? You mentioned
Hotel Del, yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It
Gorgeous.
is so fantastic. But of course, Fort Worth, the Sundance Square, we're going to be there October the 16th through the 19th. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, let me ask you this. Now, is this your first time speaking at the conference?
First time at HR Southwest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, are you in for a treat? Hey, let me ask you this. What are you most looking forward to for the HR Southwest conference?
Probably the same thing I like about all the conferences I attend, which is getting to interact and learn from the other attendees. When I hear what other people are experiencing, what they've tried, at their workplaces, it's inspirational to me to go, oh yeah, that sounds like that would work, or I've heard of something similar, or I could take that back. So a little bit of just getting great minds in the room and meeting new people and learning from them. I think, the sessions, of course, always have good information, but getting to sit next to someone or across from someone and learn from someone also in the trenches, I find that really helpful.
Oh, no question. That's why I love the theme, learn, network, and grow, because that's really what it's all about. Okay. This is my last question I have for the show today. This has been such a fun time. Victoria, 10 years older, is knocking at your front door, and you are going to go answer that door. What is she going to tell you?
Probably something about not stressing out so much, not, I'm hoping in 10 years from now, I will have my priorities in such a place that I don't sweat the small stuff as much. And then maybe not to eat all my lunches at my desk.
Do not do that. I love that. This has been so much fun. I cannot wait to see you in Fort Worth. Again, the HR Southwest Conference is coming to Fort Worth, October the 16th through the 19th. I'm going to have a link in the show notes. You can register at hrsouthwest.org. And of course, conference director this year is Shirley Johnson. Everything is powered by Dallas HR. It's just going to be a fun time. It's the Texas SHRM State Conference, and we're expecting a lot of people and a lot of energy, a lot of learning, networking, and growing. So, hey, if someone heard something today, Victoria, that said, you know what, I learned something here. I want to learn more. I'd like to connect with Victoria. How is the best way for them to connect?
Probably LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I am Victoria Person. SHRM-CP is, I think, my full LinkedIn handle. So yeah, you can find me there.
Well, I appreciate you coming onto the show and just sharing your wisdom, your perspective. The session you're going to be talking about is LGBTQ and who are we and what do we want? It's going to be a great session. Be sure and check out Victoria's session at the HR Southwest Conference. And again, thank you for coming on and sharing today. And I can't wait to see you in Fort Worth.
Thank you, Bruce. This was great fun. Appreciate it.
Awesome. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.